Awesome. This video is now being recorded as well. Great. Well, thank you all for turning up on a lovely Saturday morning. There are many other things you could be doing today. You could be going out, you could be watching something, but you've decided to turn up here and help yourself. That's the way I'd like to frame it. By helping yourself, you're also helping me because eventually some of you are going to be going out and building some beautiful products. And when you build beautiful products, you help everyone. And in that process, I also benefit because my life gets better. So let me put it this way. Everything that I'm doing right now indirectly kind of also benefits me along the way. So with that, we will get started. Some of you have taken the time out to diligently write down and articulate very well the kind of questions that you want to ask me. So I'm just going to go around and see who amongst you have asked the questions. And then in no particular order, I'm going to start by answering those questions, right? Along the way, in case I do see the person not present or we are exhausting questions and we still have time, I will open up the floor for more questions from you folks. So maybe along the way, you will get some inspiration, you'll get some ideas, and you say, hey, how about I ask this question? So any and every question pertaining to either product or growth or a career in either of these two fields, I will try to answer. I, by no means, am a subject matter expert. I'm still a student. I'm still learning. So at best, I will share perspectives about how I think about this. Do not take this as the Bible answer. It's an opportunity to get a perspective. You should ask this question to other folks as well. And over a period of time, you'll get a sense of what most people think, and you can use your own judgment then to decide how to act upon the answers that you get, right? So with that, I'll start off with the AMA. Let me see. I see Ashish Prakash here. Ashish, are you here?
Hi, Deepak. Yes.
Good morning.
Good
Ashish,
morning.
so your question was for product leadership roles, that is either in being a platform PM or an AI PM, is knowing being a growth PM an important or necessary knowledge? Or is it a good to have and one can do without it as well? Have I articulated your question fairly well?
Yes. I might not have written it very well. So
No worries at all.
basically, what I wanted to ask Deepak was that let's say if I want to get into data AI or a platform PM sort of a thing in leadership roles, so
Right.
will a growth PM experience be a more solid grounding, or is it a more conceptual understanding should I have, and I should pursue data AI PM only? That's what my question is largely.
Understood. Understood. I'll answer this from two lenses, right? The first lens is that any PM role will help you transition well to being a data PM or an AI PM. Because the first principles of product management remain the same, right? In terms of understanding the problem space, really getting down to the root of it, knowing how to prioritize the right problems, picking ones that add value to your consumers and to your business within the constraints of both these entities are essential. So nothing changes about that. Now, where does then growth PM help in probably, let's say, a data PM role? One clear translation that definitely helps is when you understand growth as a concept very, very well, it allows for you to interpret what the organization needs long before leadership comes to you. So if you spend enough time solving growth problems, you know what are the trickiest problems which are preventing your organization from a growth standpoint. And in that context, you can then ask yourself, well, what kind of solutions do we need to come up? So again, for a moment, avoid even thinking in the AI direction or a data direction. What kind of capabilities, solutions, infrastructure needs to be built in order to unlock short-term, medium-term, and long-term growth? Once you understand this, you can then ask, okay, now that I know what the organization needs from a growth standpoint, what kind of data capabilities do I need to unlock this specific need? Or what kind of AI solutions can I bring where AI is probably one approach towards solving this particular problem, because no particular solution is always going to be AI specific. It is one amongst the many tool sets that you have to solve a particular type of problem. For example, let's assume for a company like Myntra, you need to make your search more relevant. One approach is improving query understanding, search relevance, having better indexing structures, etc. But it is not by any means a limiting factor to say that you have to force fit AI here. For some of those solutions, you'll realize that your current technology is not as good as what, let's say, generative AI or large language models can do. And therefore, you bring it about and say that, yes, if I have this particular solution, the gains are so much more. And therefore, I choose to prioritize and make it as part of my execution strategy, right? But if you did not know what is preventing your organization from growing, what is preventing your product to have a better fit with newer segments of customers, it will be almost very, very difficult to get a sense of what would be the most meaningful solution. So you can be a great data PM, but to prioritize the right set of choices, you can be a great AI PM, but again, prioritizing the right set of choices that influence the most impactful set of initiatives that actually drive growth. That's where having a good understanding of growth really, really helps. Now, it's not necessarily, therefore, you have to be a growth PM, but having a good understanding of growth does help in making better choices for the organization. So you don't have to be a growth PM as a practitioner. You shouldn't have had to, let's say, being a PM who solves for acquisition or retention or engagement. It's a nice to have, but it's not a must have. So I hope that helps give clarity. Growth understanding is important. Growth PM specifically, you don't have to spend time in the trenches to have built those products to necessarily move on to being a better data PM or to be a better AI PM.
Understood. Well, I'm not sure. I have, in a way, made my camera work bad, but yeah, thank you, Deepak, for the clear answer.
Awesome, awesome, great. Moving on, I see Nilay. Nilay, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. So Nilay has asked the question: what are the top qualities and skills you look for when hiring a product manager beyond technical and domain knowledge? What differentiates strong candidates from the rest? Very interesting question. Very rarely do I see people asking questions on skill sets that go beyond core craft. If I were to look back and see what made some of the PMs that we hired stand out remarkably over everyone else, over and above craft, that is, right? I think there are 2 to 3 traits. And when I say traits, it doesn't mean that you're naturally born this way. It means these are also skills that you can hone over a period of time. I think the first is people who are insanely curious. They have this uncontrollable hunger or desire to understand things at an incredibly deep level. And they're just not satisfied with simple answers. They will almost often follow up saying, but that doesn't make sense. And here's why it doesn't make sense. And until they get to the bottom of things, they don't stop. So there's this very obsessive, you can almost call this an obsessive personality of sorts, where you're like, until you get to really, really understanding at a very, very simplistic sense, they're not satisfied. So that probably makes them want to understand problem spaces really, really well, right? Otherwise, what can tend to happen is in organizations, especially ones where power plays a huge role, it almost happens that leadership says this is exactly what needs to be done. And a lot of folks will be like, okay, you know what? Leadership has said it, so we. But the curious individual will say, yes, leadership has asked, but I don't understand it well enough. And whatever has been presented is not convincing. So I'm going to do my own homework over and above what is being put out there. And they start going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. But they don't stall execution, right? But they are curious and they try to build their own opinions. And then see, are they able to agree, align, and reason with what is being told? Or are they landing someplace else? And then they try to bridge the gap along the way. So I see that would be the first most important trait I look at. Like, is this individual intrinsically curious? Have they been curious about things in life? The second trait that I look for is resilience. The reason why that matters is you could have all the craft in the world, but the sad reality of building products is most of the time things never go the way you want for it to go. Uh, the odds are more failure as opposed to success. So what then happens is if you're the kind of person that gets easily bogged down or knocked down by failure, it becomes very, very difficult to persist. And if you're going to rely on external motivation, somebody else giving you a reason, here's why you should do it, at some point, you're also going to run out of external motivation. There's only so many external carrots you can give to a person. Beyond a point, you need to have some drive to say, I need to go get back at this game, right? And if you're working at a startup, even more important, if you're working in big bets where the risks of failure are incredibly high, it then becomes supremely important. Then resilience becomes this very, very integral ability to go through daily chaos and yet be able to manage and see things through. This is the second ability. The third I would put is the ability to work well with people. Now, why this matters a lot is ultimately you're not building a product by yourselves. Sadly, product managers, most, not all, can't build products by themselves, right? We're probably either an engineer or a designer or a business person who's like, hey, well, this seems like an interesting job, or you've actually landed up here. So you probably don't have all the skills necessary to finally see the product. You need a team, right? And therefore, it becomes incredibly important that you learn how to work with the most difficult kind of people as well, right? You're going to meet people from all walks of life, right? Someone who has never touched technology will be probably a business counterpart. Your finance person doesn't care what technology you're building. Ultimately, they think, boss, I am not making money. We're bleeding money. Fix this problem. Or someone's going to come up and put very hard constraints against you. So it then becomes critical to be able to work with people who have come from different walks of life, different mental models on how the world operates, different ideologies. And in the worst possible circumstances, everyone's worst is going to be on the table. How do you then learn to be that calm person who has the ability to still get everyone along, make sure you don't burn bridges, make sure everyone feels heard, respected, valued, and get them to come together as a team and say, hey, I get it, we're in crazy times, but we need to see this through, right? So the ability to really, really work well with people makes a huge difference. And I see this probably one of the biggest deal breakers for PMs, like very well practicing PMs, to progress in their career ladder because they're not able to manage people. They're struggling to manage their own teams. They're struggling to manage their leadership. They're struggling to manage their stakeholders. And they would say, I've seen 360 feedbacks where people say, this person is really good at their craft, but I find it incredibly draining to work with this individual because they just come with a bunch of opinions and they make me look like a fool. And that makes me feel very, it puts me off guard and I just don't feel like collaborating with this individual anymore, right? So you may be right about what you have to say. You could be the absolute best at your domain. But if you make me seem and feel like someone not worth sharing the table with you and seen as a peer or someone respected, for all reason, I'm always going to be like, I have no interest. And I'm probably going to find other people to partner with. So I'll probably find someone who's subpar, but still more agreeable, someone who's more connectable with, and get my work done. Because ultimately, it's the team that wins and not an individual that wins. So the ability to work with people really, really matters. And very few people put any effort towards building that skill set and the traits required to work with individuals. The last I would say is someone who's incredibly creative. Why that matters is you are trying to find solutions in very tight constraints. Money is less, people is less. There's only so much that technology can do, and there's only so much time available in your hand to solve that problem. So finding out very interesting ways of connecting the dots and coming up with very ingenious solutions which are fast to market, low on cost, high on value is a hard skill to build, right? And this is not so much about craft, but in general, you would notice that over a period of time in life as individual, over and above their product work, have found ingenious ways of solving very interesting problems that they've been faced with. And that's an interesting trait that I've observed in really, really good PMs. And it's not something that you ask as and saying, hey, what was the most interesting solution you built in the products that you worked on? You start seeing this in their other aspects of life as well, right? So these are probably the 4 key traits that I look for. There are definitely a lot more as well, but I tend to over-index on looking at these 4 attributes to see if this individual is having abilities beyond their craft to delivering impact. So I hope that gives you a fairly well-rounded set of traits, skills, abilities, you may call it whatever you would like, to build upon over and above your core product craft skills.
Yes, that helps me a lot. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Fantastic. Next.
Deepak, if I like, can you please go on the third, right? Working with people, when you asked, working with sub or more agreeable. You can throw.
Keshav, your audio is a little broken, so I don't think I was able to understand very well your question. It's okay, you can maybe turn off your video so that your audio gets better. Or if that doesn't work, you can probably type out reasonably better.
I would suggest please go on. I can catch up later with you.
Okay. Since you're anyway talking, I will pick up your question because I think you had also posed a question, right? Your question was, if I haven't worked on AI projects and don't see any opportunity in the coming years in my org, is that detrimental to my product career? Let me answer this in 2 ways, right? The first lens is, it depends largely on what your ambition is and what kind of products you'd like to build. Everything starts with that, right? If you think of yourself as a product, you have a vision for yourself. Where do you want to land up being? And from that lens, if you are convinced that I definitely want to be someone who builds AI products because I see this as the future, or it excites me a lot, then yes, it does matter that at some point you do move into a role where you get more hands-on into AI product management. I would like to put a little bit of distinction here to say, when I say AI product management, it's not using AI tools to be a product manager. It is actually working with your data science team to say, let's build better models, or you're a data PM building new kinds of AI pipeline tools, or you're finding out interesting use cases where you're able to build APIs and then, constructs on top of that to add value, where AI is bread and butter to your core solutioning, right? That said, I would say in India, it is probably still very nascent. There aren't going to be too many companies which are actually doing this really, really well. Most teams are probably still consumers of existing APIs, and they're not going to get into what I would call as core AI PM roles at this point of time. So probably the best way to transition into such a role is to probably get into teams where solutions are inherently ML oriented, where machine learning is front right. For example, teams that are working on, say, recommenders as a problem statement, or search as a problem statement, or any kind of predictive analytics as a problem statement. They're more closer to data-driven solutions. Data forms the crux, and therefore you have a good adjacency to say at some point, understanding the core tenets of even ML allows you to be better positioned to move from ML to language models, and therefore AI and any other associated adjacencies. That said, the scope of PM is incredibly large. There are going to be many products, many businesses, which don't require AI, or there are other aspects of solution building which doesn't necessitate AI. And that world will continue to exist. And therefore, you can continue being a PM who's focusing on, let's say, core problems, growth problems, platform capabilities, data problems, etc., and build your skill set in that direction. So you need to choose what your end goal is, and also be cognizant of where the market is at this point of time, and then try to figure out where that game can land up. Right? So it's a personal choice. There is no right answer and wrong answer. But the choice that you make in terms of where you want to land up is a function of the vision that you have for yourself. So once you have that clarity, it then becomes easier to backwork from that to say, what company do I need to move to? And what is the best adjacency available that allows me to get my foot into the door and then gradually grow in that role, which allows me to move eventually over a period of time into products where AI is core and I'm actually working on core AI problems. I hope that helps answer the question that you have.
Deepak, all right. Am I audible this time?
Yes.
Yeah. Switch off my camera. You started by saying that the first sentence you said was that I should know where I want to end up with, right? But just in my case, I would like to get a idea from you, because for me, I'm not very particular. It's just that I enjoy working for B2C products, right? And that's what I've been doing, and I like it doing, and I see myself doing over a period of time. So I'm not very specific about very one particular domain as such. And second, what you said is that if I want to be solving problems which are more likely to be solved by AI, but why this question emanates is because AI is kind of getting into every problem that we are solving in one way or other. Like you were answering prior question as well, where you said that this is one of the way to execute or solve the problem for our customers. But it's like if you haven't done it, then you kind of get on a back seat where someone else will be heard, where someone else right now, like at least my organization is going crazy, like they are trying to put everything through AI. I don't know what the outcome will be, but it's from that point of view where this question comes from, right? Where I don't see myself participating very actively because I don't have very strong or hands-on knowledge on AI-based products.
Got it. So there are two ways to look at it, right? One is to be aware of what AI can do, and therefore understanding when and when not to use AI. The other is to say that, cool, if AI is the solution, what is the right way of building the solution? What kind of choices do you make? How do you define the scope of the product? What kind of trade-offs do you make, right? You definitely need to be everyone needs to be in the former bucket, which is to say that everyone needs to have a fairly good understanding of what AI is, so that you are able to even consider that as part of your solution space, right? So that is an absolute necessity, but that doesn't mean you're an AI PM. That's the distinction, right? Everyone should be aware of AI. So put it this way, right? Once upon a time, circa 2007-8, the entire world was going crazy saying that we are going to be mobile first. And therefore, everybody is going to be hiring mobile PMs. Mobile is just a platform. And therefore, you need to understand the first principle of what mobile is. What are its abilities? What are its disabilities? What can it do? What can it not do? What are its constraints? And how do you need to think grounds up when building such a product? And does such a product make sense for your organization and for the audience you're going after? That does not necessarily mean you're a subject matter expert in AI. It does not mean you have to have worked on, let's say, language models. It does not mean that you have spent years doing a PhD. Spending enough time understanding the first principles gives you confidence to know how to make good decisions and know that that's strategically the right bet to make. Then it goes from a strategic bet to saying solutioning. And even the way it works today is, for most companies, you're not going to be doing what, say, an Anthropic or let's say, what Microsoft is doing at an infrastructure level or at a model building level. You're largely going to be consumers of APIs. The beauty of today's LLMs is a very simple distinction is in the past, you need to have had an ML team, an ML ops team, a data science team, an ML engineer, a data engineer, and whatnot to be able to pull off anything related to AI. Today, the average Joe with a simple API call can pull off a lot of these things. So for all practical reasons, you can build AI solutions simply by using the right set of APIs and orchestrating the right set of capabilities to give the desired end result for your customers without necessarily having to get into the nitty-gritties of being an AI PM. I think to that extent, most PMs should have cognizance. But since your specific question is, should I be an AI PM? That is a very, very specific role and definition. And that is what I would say is, if let's say your aim is to get into the nitty-gritties of model building, optimizing those models, fine-tuning them, building very specific use cases over and above what your model can do. Those are situations where, yes, knowing and working with such kind of data sets, knowing the first principles of language models, having worked with such kind of data models, pipelines, infrastructure, knowing those will help you make better choices to build the kind of solutions that you want to. So that's where I want to draw the line. You have to choose which side of things you want to be on. Most organizations in India, I do believe, will form in the former bucket. Everyone are going to be consumers of this. If you're choosing to be a platform PM as well, even if you're a platform PM who has fairly good understanding of data products and basic ML products, it gives you fairly good visibility into the world of AI. That's how I would like to define and distinguish.
Got it. Yeah, that clarifies for me completely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on to the next question. Let me just see a quick sense of who's here. Or maybe if you have already filled the form, what you can do is just do a quick raise of hands. So it becomes easier for me to know who's on the call, who has already raised questions. And I can just quickly go in no particular order and start picking up your questions. Cool. I see Gaurav, you've raised your hand first. Let me just quickly go to your question. Gaurav, your question is, AI is making big waves in the current market. How do you approach deciding whether an AI feature will genuinely enhance user value versus just being a cool tech addition? Any frameworks or metrics that you think could be helpful in making these decisions? Is that a fair articulation of your question? Anything that I missed out?
Yes, so I think this is a good follow-up question based on what Keshav and you had been discussing just a while back. So yeah, this is like AI has been adopted just like a cool feature is what I see. That day I went to buy a washing machine also, and washing machine is certain AI. So I was like, this is not possible. So what's going on? So that's the reason I just wanted to understand. Even I'm getting into AI agents right now.
Right.
Of developers we are building AI agents. So I just wanted to know. Like AI is a cool thing for sure, but is it necessary, and will it only if it brings value, it makes sense to add into the product? So just wanted your perspective on this.
It's a fantastic question. And yes, I have also been largely scratching my head when I see, oh, there's this new toothbrush with AI in it, and it's the exact same toothbrush. Nothing has changed about it, right? So every time, a new tech catches buzz in the market, almost often than not, you're going to find a bunch of companies that want to capitalize on that marketing buzz and try to force fit it into their products, whether or not it actually adds value or whether or not it actually even has AI, right? So what will then happen, or most often than not, people will find ways of masking their product value proposition, saying that we have some ML model, or we have some concept of some data science project that is running in our company, and therefore it gives us the right to use it. So there's a lot of marketing that is going to be injected because everyone is catching on to this wave. especially B2B SaaS companies or some consumer tech companies, they're going to be like, oh, wow, an AI-driven solution. The end consumer doesn't understand necessarily what it is, and it helps, therefore, to sell the product more effectively. So I would say you are going to find companies who are going to capitalize on revenue maximization by using this AI buzzword. That said, it brings us back to the more pertinent question that you asked, which is, how does it add value? The way I'd like to answer that question is, you find out value by the problem that you're solving and the extent to which your solution can create an impact. And in this particular case, AI is yet another solution among 10 different ways of solving the same problem statement, right? There is no reason to say that AI is the only way to solve a problem. There are certain circumstances where AI can do something better, quicker, faster, cheaper. The question is, does it? For example, one of the core capabilities of an AI, and a very, very popular use case, it is supposed to have language-like capabilities, and therefore it should have the ability to converse with a human being. It has the ability to synthesize large data sets. And therefore, a very interesting use case that everyone is trying to build for is customer service, right? And that seems to be a bunch of companies trying to solve for that. Now, how, in the absence of AI, and if, let's say, this was to be done by humans, and this was to be done by plain vanilla rule engines, with or without AI, the way you would understand whether or not customer support is solving a problem is to know that, are your customers happy at the end of the day? How do you measure that? Are the resolutions effective? Is that customer coming back? Because ultimately, your biggest concern is if there's an unhappy customer who has gone all the way to customer support, this is the cohort of customers who are most likely to churn. Is this customer coming back? Nothing about this has an AI concept towards it at this point of time, right? You're only concerned about the fact is the resolution happening effectively? Is the customer happy at the end of the call? Is the customer coming back to continue doing business with you? If none of this is happening, it really doesn't matter what. At some point, you're saying that, you know what, humans, we hypothesize, aren't equipped enough to go through a wide variety of scenarios to come up with the right resolution, because you have to spend time training a human. That human probably doesn't find this to be the most exciting job on the planet. Imagine sitting at a call center receiving angry calls from people 24/7. You're not going to be a very happy person because, yes, I'm here to serve you. You're going to be like, yes, I'm going to go through my protocol. There's going to be tons of protocols, and I'll be like, oh man, which protocol do I pick? And at some point, you're very confused. Your brain is frying out. You'll say, I don't know. I'm going to pick the simplest solution. So you have all of these limitations. So you hypothesize at this point of time that an AI agent, which is being trained through multiple documentations, you've built some kind of a RAG model which has fine-tuned it for your particular organization use case, and you hypothesize that for certain sets of customer escalations, if you're putting an agent, they're going to be nicer, they'll be more effective in resolving, and the resolution that they give is well within the definitions of what your organization wants as end outcomes. And should that be done, you should be able to see this customer going back into the happy path and therefore continuing with business. So all of your solutions, it really doesn't matter whether it's with AI or without AI, your problem statements will give clarity on what the metrics are in terms of how to understanding whether value is being created and delivered. And then when you put an AI solution to it, you'll definitely have a few more metrics which are specific to whether that AI is doing the job, right? Is the AI, the latency working well? Is the response being as per plan? Are there any false positives coming in? These are very model-specific metrics. But at a business level, you definitely know that, hey, is the customer happy? Are they coming back? Are they coming back a lot more to the business because the resolution has been speedy? Are there specific flows where the happy parts are becoming 10x better as a consequence? And therefore, you know that the value is being derived and delivered to the customer. So AI is a solution. It doesn't define your business metric for success. That said, there will be specific product metrics which help you to understand whether your AI solution is working or not the way you intend for it. But it is not going to be the metric that is going to define whether or not your business is capturing value. Your business problem will define whether or not you have the right metric to solve for it. I hope that gives clarity on how to think about this.
Yes, that's a good explanation, to be honest. And yeah, actually, at the end of the day, if the solution has been implemented, what are those objectives being achieved or not? That's the key to makes sense.
Super. Great. Next, I have Sandeep. Sandeep, just give me a second while I quickly check in on your question. One moment, just reading through. Can you please suggest how we should answer product monetization questions in the interview? Can you please provide a framework for it? What are the different levers for solving monetization case studies? How do you write which monetization solution is better? Can you please suggest some good sources to learn about it? This is a very, very broad question, and also one that probably requires a course in itself. But I think the way I would like to answer this question so that it gives you a good starting point is, in order for you to answer any monetization questions, I think it's first important to understand probably all possible monetization models out there in the world, right? For a wide range of products. That awareness helps you to build some kind of mental models to say, why do companies use particular monetization model? For example, why does, say, a product like Duolingo have a freemium business model wherein some users can use it for free for a period of time, and at some point there is some inflection which causes people to go for a subscription? Or why do SaaS products have a subscription model, right? Or why do, let's say, a marketplace model have a two-sided take rate, wherein you have a commission rate for, let's say, hosts at a particular, suppliers at a certain rate, and for demand side at a particular rate. So I think spending a lot of time trying to understand many businesses, the way they monetize, why did they choose those monetization models, and understanding in retro why those choices were made will help you build over a period of time a good understanding of monetization models. And therefore you can be framework free, but rather reason from first principles, saying that, hey, this business, it seems, is one of those kinds of businesses where people need to spend time using the product, building selling. For example, let's say you're building a B2B SaaS product, and you have many ways of monetizing it. You can say, hey, right from the word get-go, you have to, you could pay a big hefty fee and start using it, and you should never pay again. For example, I think Jason Fried, the guy behind 37 Signals Basecamp, has come up with a new philosophy saying, in the olden days of software, you just paid for software once and you never had to pay for it again. His ideology is, he comes from a school of thinking that it's a crime to keep asking people to pay for software. And he says, therefore, I'm going to give you this piece of software, and the only reason why I have to keep charging money for you from me is because I have to host this software on my infrastructure, and you're continuously, making demands from my software. But the minute I deploy it on-prem and you're managing this, the transaction is a done deal. So I'm going to capture all of that value upfront. So therefore, you understand that the reasoning for that one-time fee is only and only because he says that if I put the software on your platform, it's on your premise, you have no other interactions with me going forward, it's a one-time transaction, there's no reason for me to charge a subscription. However, Adobe says, hey, we're not going to put it on-prem, it's going to be on my cloud. You're going to be accessing my software on a daily basis. And I don't want you to be incurring upfront costs because that is a prohibitively high cost to use my piece of software. So I'm rather going to go on a usage model. As much as you use, you're going to derive value. And therefore, I'm going to say, hey, if you're only going to use XYZ features, why should you spend $1,000? You're probably going to use features which is probably worth maybe $50. That's it. So I'm only going to be asking you to pay that much. And if you don't want to pay for it, no problem. I have a free tier model as well. So when you reverse engineer and study multiple business models and their corresponding monetization models, you'll have a much deeper, better sense of what are all the possible avenues of monetization. Why do certain monetization models make sense for certain circumstances? And therefore, in the context of the interview that you're attending, you can understand who is the customer, what are their friction points, what is their operating model, how does the business deliver value to the customers, and therefore see which monetization model most suits. And then it's still an experiment. You can't be sure whether or not A, B, C, or work. will work. So you try to experiment, see which works, and over a period of time, you fine tune and come to the right monetization model. So that's how I have been learning this aspect. There isn't a framework. The best framework is actually to spend time understanding multiple companies. I think there is this obsession to put frameworks into everything. I think the simplest framework is to do our homework and study multiple companies. The more time we spend studying companies, you will start understanding things from a very, very simple point of view. You don't need complex frameworks saying, if this, then that, do this. My brain, unfortunately, is not very sophisticated. I try to dumb down things to the absolute simplest. And to do things at a very simple level, you have very, very good clarity on a wide variety of domains. So studying history, study the history of companies, study the business models, operating conditions, choices they made as to why that model works. And in that process, you will identify a pattern. And then when you're thrown a particular problem statement, you'll be able to connect those patterns better. It is not to say that is 100% the right answer, but it helps you converge to a better answer. So I hope that helps give you some sense of how to think about monetization as a problem statement.
Yeah,
So-
makes sense.
Sorry to interrupt, Deepak, but like I think you had written an article about this or something that like for monetization there are three key parameters: the model, also the second part would be the value delivered by the product, and the third part is barrier to entry or threshold to the number of people we are reaching. So those would be the three parameters. And like I think in the article you had mentioned something about how Swiggy and Zomato had changed their model where like earlier they were charging 200 rupees for the subscription. Now they have brought down the cost to 30 rupees and they are charging 10 rupees per delivery as platform fee, where like they have changed the approach and where they are varying the way in which they're monetizing.
Absolutely. See, all of these are abstractions in a particular context, right? So if you look at most businesses, right, at the end of the day, you're trying to find out what is it that customers are feeling comfortable to pay for the value that I'm delivering, right? And there has to be at some point some disproportionate value for which the person is saying, this money that I'm giving seems to be pittance compared to the value that I'm giving. So it almost feels that the company is super dumb. It seems to be a crime that this company is giving me this value at such a low price. That the value that I'm getting is so much more that the thought process of paying is almost like, man, I'm getting $1,000 worth of value, and this person is only charging $10 for it. But little do they understand that $10 is actually a lot of money for us at this point in time for the cost of service providing, right? So ultimately, it's monetization is value delivery, value capture, and there is some aspects of features that you're providing for which the customer is willing to pay a reasonable price point, which is far greater than the cost at which you're costing to provide. That is, I wouldn't call this as monetization. This is business 101. You make more money than it costs to provide that service. That is the essence of business. You charge $10, it makes $1 to provide that. That's a good business. If you're selling for $10, but it costs $100, you're running a charity organization, which is also what a lot of startups are doing sadly today. And they have really no clear path on how to bring that $100 down, right? So that is probably the ultimate abstraction of all businesses. But within that, there are multiple nuances. Marketplace models. So marketplaces have different monetization models. Where in a marketplace do you charge for money? Do you charge at transaction level? Do you charge at a service level? Do you say that certain additional value adds can be created and that is a subscription model? Each of this are hypotheses at best. I don't think when Swiggy started off, they said we'll start a subscription service. Along the way, they realized that, hey, we need something to have consistent revenue to retain our most loyal customers. It came from that business model. And then they probably went around and asking, well, what are probably 10 different ways to retain our most loyal customers? Well, one thing we do know is that the ones who stick with us the most are the ones who have very high order values. And for them, it could be a friction point that paying that additional 29 rupees is something of, yeah, they may not really like it, but they will do it. But what if I remove that 29 rupees and mask it as you pay me 29 rupees upfront for 10 transactions and you therefore have. So you're trying to find out some arbitrage where I definitely am not going to use the absolute tier limit. But at that price point, average amongst n number of customers, it works well. So where is this theory coming? It's not coming from Swiggy. Swiggy is not the one who's innovated it. Hundreds and thousands of companies have done it in the past. Which is why in certain posts that I make it in context to a certain business. But it's not a golden principle that it can be applied across all companies. In the context of Swiggy, in the context of Zomato, yes. But can I apply that to some other company? Maybe, maybe not. And that's why having a larger repository of companies that you understand helps. And building that mental model helps you to be more comfortable to identify paths of friction, paths where getting people to pay is not going to be seen as something that, yeah, I don't feel like I'm being robbed. It's money that I'm willing to give generously.
Yeah, so to generalize that, I was saying that like you were mentioning that like there are three components: value delivered, value charged, and the number of people you reach. That is also a part that you have to take into consideration while considering a monetization model.
100%. Like if you're able to charge only one person, it's really not an effective model. So what you want is the largest surface area under the curve for which the dollar value per customer is high. So if you basically look at any revenue equation, it's ARPU multiplied by number of customers. That's it, right? There is no more of a simpler equation that you can come to for any business model, right? Now, how do you generate ARPU? That's where the monetization angle comes in, then, right? There are n number of ways of doing it. Now, that ARPU may not necessarily come from me. It can come from somebody else as well, which is the ad business model. To say that I have customers, but the ARPU is actually generated by getting my suppliers to pay for it, which is also what, say, a Zepto or a Zomato is doing, saying that I have this incredibly large population of customers and they have their eyeballs. And if you want your product to have higher priority and higher visibility to drive transactions, spend ad dollars on me. That also gives me ARPU. So yes, you need a large customer base, and the monetization question really is, what are the various ways in which I can generate ARPU from my customer? And that ARPU is, there is no one particular model set in stone. Having a good understanding of value delivery, value capture, and what is therefore value delivery? What is it that customers really, really value? And is it a scarce value in the sense that nobody else is able to generate as much value as I do? For example, if we take just the Swiggy, Zomato, and Instamart examples, no FMCG player has as much granular targeting ad capabilities to drive that last mile of transaction conversion as effectively as quick commerce or retail commerce, which is why if you see Walmart statements, let's say if anyone is from Walmart, I think Doug McMillon a while back said, never have I seen a business model or a revenue model being as impactful as ads, because from $0 to $100 million took us probably less than a few months as opposed to any other business that we've done in the past. Why? Because we've got this enormous corpus of data. We understand exactly when to show ads to the customers. We have their buying behavior. We know every single customer's historical transaction. So I know if I have bought Tata Techly Tea and I have bought brand X, there's a high correlation that you're a premium customer who's going to buy tea, and I can suggest you a new brand, and therefore I can use this as a brand promotion. Way more effective than doing, say, top-line advertising. Way more effective than doing, let's say, billboards. And therefore, brands are like, oh, wow, I have this targeted capability where I can measure ROI so much more effectively that these guys are giving these ads at a steal. And even if you were to then be greedy, for a lack of better words, and squeeze them, you don't have a better option. So I'm willing to pay that price because the value delivered is so high and the business impact or personal impact is so much more higher for me as well. So simplifying it, ARPU into customers is your basic equation. But what is your ARPU driver? Again, broad principle is value delivery, value capture. But within that, what are the models? That's why studying the history of multiple companies, what has worked in the past, what are the patterns which drive it, allow you to identify. However, the only shortfall in this is history only teaches you what worked in the past. It may not give you an insight into probably new age monetization models, which nobody has thought about. And that is purely the realm of creativity. There is, for example, tipping people. It's a very alien concept. And it comes from a very obscure industry from the world of internet. If you know what I'm saying. But somehow that has made its way into mainstream market. And now it is available on platforms such as Patreon and YouTube, etc. So those of you who are wondering, where is this obscure industry? It's the porn industry. They were the ones who actually figured out that tipping is a great business model. But someone knew that, was able to translate and say, well, same principles apply. it's performance, and therefore Patreon is also a performance act, and therefore I can apply tipping model. Now, where did the guy who came up with that idea in the porn industry? Well, I don't know. But someone was very creative enough to think about that business model, right? So sometimes models can come out of anywhere. It requires some degree of creativity. It requires understanding humans as a whole and seeing, are there any anecdotes of this happening in the real world, any other culture, and can I then start plugging and trying that out? And that's what then ShareChat did, and they've made tips as a huge business. In-app gifting, something that became very popular in games. You saw that it worked in gaming. This seems similar to gaming. You're then able to copy-paste models. So studying multiple businesses, studying how people have paid each other over decades, centuries, years, allows you to then pick up some instance and see if you can apply that into the context of how do I inject value creation and capture in this interesting way. So I hope, Sahil, that gives you some more clarity into how to connect what I wrote with what I'm saying now and see that as a full spectrum of thought process. It's not a specific answer. It's more of a directional sense to how to think about these problems.
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Awesome. Next is Kaustav. We have about 30 minutes. I'm going to try to make sure that I at least cover Kaustav's, Vamsi, and then Saurabh's question as well. Kaustav, let me just go to your question.
Sure.
As a product manager, you may have faced ambiguous situations in your career where the CXO management wants something but is not clear on requirements or what objectives will help solve. How do you recommend to maneuver such situations in one career and become a fearless product manager? I think this is something that a lot of folks will resonate with, be it early stage, mid stage, or late stage in your career. At one point, as a product manager, you would have definitely faced a circumstance where leadership said, "Get this done." How do you deal?
In fact, some, just to cut you over there, Deepak. In fact, some weird scenarios where maybe a product was being worked upon, and the product manager who was working on it moved out of the company, and then that is handed over to you, and it has immense pressure from the leadership to be, delivered and extract value of that out of that. So, but you as an individual, you are not convinced that this has potential. How do you maneuver these kind of career situations?
So I'll answer this with a real life example of something that happened to me. So that way it's an answer with an illustration to relate with. There was a team that I inherited at Myntra. It's the exact same circumstance. Someone else had done some work in the past. And at some point, this got insane leadership buy-in, in the sense that 2 out of 4 CXOs were executive sponsors for it. And they were convinced that this is the right solution. I'll give you a broad sense of what the problem statement was. So everyone is aware of Myntra. And one of the core problem statements for Myntra is, how do you expand geographies and go deeper into specific markets? And when I say specific markets, Myntra started off by operating in urban markets. And at some point, we also have to start going into tier 2, tier 3 markets. And the conviction built through some research. And when I say research, it was customer research, data-driven research, and whatnot. A bunch of things had been done. And everyone was very convinced that the answer to why our tier 2, tier 3 customers weren't converting were they found our app to be not usable. Now, you can't change the entire app. So the solution space that was prioritized was you want to build assistance solutions, which is smart assistants that help you navigate. So you would have seen this as, say, tool tips, pointers, coach marks, and whatnot, right? And therefore, there was a lot of push, and there was already an enormous roadmap built in that particular direction. My thesis was that there could be elements of it, yes, but that is not the prime reason why this is happening, because there are other products out there being used by tier 2, tier 3 India, which has no coach marks, no guidance, and yet customers are using them rather effectively well, which means we are trying to think that our customers actually are digitally illiterate. But the counterpoint to it is YouTube. YouTube is probably one digital product which is being used way more than any other Indian product in this country. Now, if someone say, how on earth that product become popular if there's no tools such as, assistance tools or guidance. They've figured it out. One is the interface is intuitive, but someone could also counter-arguably argue that, well, someone who's never seen a digital product, this is an alien situation. How do they use it, right? WhatsApp. Rarely do you see any kind of coach marks, assistance tools, which means there are some guiding principles on how people think. And these products have made their way, which means they've also started getting familiarized with how to use digital products. Myntra as a product is a far smaller subset compared to WhatsApp and a YouTube. So this line of reasoning was to say that your customers are able to use it because there are other data points which also suggest, but there are reasons why they're not able to fulfill their journey. So our convincing was saying that it is lesser of a usability problem. It's not to say it does not exist. We need to clean up some aspects of usability. But that is not the biggest reason why people aren't converting. And for that, the problem lies in understanding retail behavior, shopping behavior, category behavior, pricing problems, trust issues, and lesser to do with usability. Now, I can't go and tell this outright because I'm inheriting this problem. I have to deliver an impact, and my team is on the line for it. If I say this out loud, two things are going to happen. People are going to say, dude, you're extremely opinionated. You have zero data to back yourself up. We made conviction. And are you saying that I'm wrong? This hurts everyone's ego at some point. So the way we tried to solve for this was to say that, listen, we agree, but I'm disagreeing and agreeing to this. However, if our hypothesis is true, we need to agree that it has to deliver business impact. Leadership cares about business impact. I care about business impact. And that's the only guiding truth for us. If this were to be true, let's break down the entire abstraction into very, very specific use cases, which is to say that if at all assistance has to be solved for, assistance has to be done across multiple touch points. It's not a one-click solves problem. So we need to build at some point a large-scale platform capability which solves for this problem statement. But before we build a platform capability, we need to be very sure that some of our top 3 burning hypotheses in terms of use cases is hitting the mark on its head. If that makes sense, it makes sense to further invest in a platform capability which can be used by multiple product teams, multiple business teams to solve for each of their specific features, etc. Now, that said, what are those top 3? Can we agree on the metric? Can we agree on those use cases? And can we come up with a quick proof of concept to quickly validate this hypothesis? Because at best, we all know this is a great hypothesis. If we are all convinced, and if the top 3 use cases are supposed to deliver impact, then if we were to ship out a non-scalable solution for the most impacted audience, we should see some reasonable movement. And when we do a prototype or an MVP, it is not going to be a short MVP. We are going to build a quality MVP. So you shouldn't feel that, oh, because we're taking shortcuts, it's going to be subpar. Let's put a quality solution out there, but it is not going to be scaling to hundreds of use cases. It's not going to cater to all segments that are going to be affected by it. We'll pick critical segments, but critical segments of statistical significance, so that you're not going to say that we picked an audience where the population was so small, the impact cannot be seen. It's a reasonably sized population, but it's not the entire population. If we pick 2-3 use cases, can we build something in the next 2 to 3 weeks or the first quarter and put it out there, quickly test? I come back to the learning, you also get more conviction. If I am wrong, I will admit, and probably we can gain more funding because we're able to see impact far greater than anything else. And what if it becomes a higher order of priority amongst the other business problems that we have? So that way, it allows for us to mitigate our overall strategic roadmap as well. Well, this sounds great. If you're willing to be wrong, great. But if it turns out to be right, we can then, because leadership also at some point, everything is a strategy. Amongst A, B, C as a choice, C is one of the choices they think is going to make sense. But if they think C requires more capital allocation, resource allocation, good to know it in advance, then after putting some amount of money into project A, which is not as impactful, when C is actually a lot more impactful. So it helps them to also de-risk their strategic choice. So when you give them such an option in a short interval of time, provide the impact and go back with the results, it then helps them to also say, oh, we have this hypothesis. Why isn't it turning out the way it did? So when we actually rolled out, we saw that the top 3 use cases that we thought where it's going to be impactful actually gave bips of movement, not even percentage points for the kind of impact that we wanted. Leadership is, that's not possible. It means the design is wrong. I said, possible. I will encourage that as well. So how about we do 2-3 more iterations and you suggest me your hypothesis. I'll get the design team to execute. They gave up with 2 more. They executed. We launched again. It still didn't. They said, okay, how about we give it one last try? So I said, no problem. Let's do that again. So they were convinced because execution at the end of the day is what gives everyone confidence. And here I'm not being a blocker to their vision at all. I'm allowing them to see with data, with execution. But along the way, what we did was we knew our conviction was very strong. So in parallel, behind the scenes, we had to go above and beyond our call of duty, spend the midnight oil a little more, and do our own research to come back with data. So by the time these 2-3 iterations happened, we had already built conviction with data on what would actually work, went back and present saying that, okay, we've done what we have asked for you. We've gone through your analysis. We've done our own analysis. And I can tell you why we have misinterpreted what they have said. And we gave them with concrete examples, with some experiments that we ran by ourselves. See, when at a certain level, again, I'll put this as a level problem. Not every PM will be able to do this. An APM, a PM, maybe even a senior PM may struggle to this because you need a certain degree of authority over your team to be able to say that, hey guys, I'm taking an executive call, trust me on this. And the reason you trust me is because historically I've given you some success in the past. I don't have the liberty of time to explain this to you. So trust me that I'm doing the right thing. And you can write down reasons why I'm also going to fail. We'll take this as part of the retro because that's how I'm going to hold myself accountable. That I am failing to listen to my team at this point of time. And some of you were actually smart in pointing out that failure. But trust me for me on the moment, because I really don't have the time to be sitting and doing a massive alignment exercise. We need to execute, we need to deliver. Let's do this exercise. At the end of 3 weeks, we'll also ship out our features, capabilities, and then present evidence. And that requires all of us to go a little more above our call of duty, because if we think we're doing the right thing, we can't do it within the confines of times that we have. We have to go a little overboard. We did that. So we did what the management wanted. We also did what we had a gut intuition on. We presented it. And therefore, with our own evidence, they were more convinced that, okay, now we see why we had a gap in our understanding. And you also did it behind closed doors in not a large forum. It gives us the ammunition to say, okay, we are refining our own hypothesis and we make it frame in such a way that leadership suddenly has gotten re-enlightened, and they're saying that, we also think this is a better way of solving it. And they're saying it as if they came up with the idea. And then they were like, yes, this is a new strategy. So it's not necessarily that you have to convince and say that you came up with it. Leadership should also feel that they have organically arrived at this new conclusion. And then they're able to piece things together and they say exactly what you want to say back to them. And now they say, oh, Deepak, you and your team should go out and actually build this because I think this is the right way of solving this problem. And it almost sounds like it was their idea that they came up with. And you're like, yes, it was your idea. And I'm glad about it. Then you go about executing. So that's how you deal with these complexities. You need to let them execute, win, go through that journey. Because if you act and put roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, you're not going to be seen as a collaborative partner. You're going to be seen as an opinionated person. And even if you're right, you need to make for a way for people to realize that their hypothesis is failing. Better that they self-realize than you point out and say that you're wrong. Nobody likes to be told you're wrong. Everybody would like to self-realize. So give them the ammunition to self-realize and have a plan B ready so that when they self-realize, you have other data points which they can see to be like, oh, wow, I actually see this better. And they're able to envision what you want to envision. And then they sell your story back to you and saying, yes, you should go about this. So that's how you deal with these kind of complexities. You need to push yourself over and above your call of duty. There is no other way to do it because your existing roadmap in itself will consume 100% of your time. In these circumstances, you have to do a little over and above to do that extra 100% so that the remaining part of your roadmap can actually go on to delivering the impact that you want. So I hope that helps answer with an illustration how to manage such a circumstance.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the real life example, Deepak. That was enlightening. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Next up, we have Vamsi. I'll just quickly check into your question, Vamsi. this is. Yes. Your question is, I'm a product manager with a strong start in the first 2 years. Though I've faced some challenges in recent months, I'm actively working on upskilling because my goal is to build products that optimize both business impact and customer experience. I'm currently finding it tough to get shortlisted for roles at companies aligned with this vision. Could you offer tactics to improve chances? Any suggestions on boosting my application interview success? Company evaluation criteria? Vamsi, maybe if you can elaborate just a little bit more, because I get a sense of what you're trying to ask, but maybe if you can be a little more specific as to what were the challenges in hiring that you faced, so that I can try to give you a slightly more pointed answer. Because otherwise I fear that I may end up giving you a more abstract answer, which may not answer the specific question that you're looking for.
Yeah, sure. So, like before that, I think I'll just have to talk about the cultural aspect of the company that I'm seeing. And this is something not just with the company that I'm working. I've also talked to some of my peers. What I've understood is most of the companies that I've talked to are optimizing more for, let's say, business impact, and are not focusing on customer experience, which in a way I'm not liking it, because what I've realized over a couple of years that whenever I've built a product where the customer experience is good and customers are happy, it's also making me happy. So that's where I've felt that is the company that I want to work with. So of course there are some companies that are well known, like let's say for example Google, like or maybe Zomato and all of this. The customer experience is good. So and of course the competition is also very high for that. And I also want to apply to other companies, and that is where I'm kind of struggling how to evaluate them if they value customer experience. That is one. And second is I am working as a growth PM and I'm trying to move to consumer PM. And that is where I'm not getting shortlisted because I feel maybe I am, or maybe the recruiters are looking for that specific experience. So I'm not getting shortlisted. I think after that, it's not a problem, because whenever I've applied for growth PM, I've got good shortlist, but I want to move to, let's say, consumer PM. So just wanted to have a understanding about both of these aspects.
I just have one follow-up question. When you say
Sure.
consumer PM, what exactly does that as opposed to growth PM?
So my understanding of consumer PM is basically they are directly shipping features that are focused on let's say the customer experience features like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is a growth PM then, according to you?
Growth PM is basically where we move this acquisition, activation, all of this metrics, and of course there also we build features that are that improve the customer experience. But I think the slight difference between consumer and this is like maybe the consumer things are like more daily use, like rather than the growth PM features. That's my understanding. So you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Got it. Cool. I think first let's start off with the definitions of consumer and growth PM. See, ultimately both are consumer PMs in the world that I operate in, right? The way I'd like to distinguish in what you're trying to say is between, say, core value proposition PMs and PMs who are solving for growth problems. And in that sense, your definition is right to say that growth PMs are solving for things like acquisition, engagement, retention. It starts with the business problem first, and then you reverse engineer to find out what the consumer problem is. Whereas with core value proposition problems, it's the actual value props. Like, for example, your search listings in Zomato is not working, or your restaurant discovery as a mechanism is not working, right? That's how I would like to distinguish between core PMs or core value prop PMs and growth PMs. Now, coming back to the question of how do you identify companies that solve or focus obsessively on consumer experience, the way you find those companies is probably the way you've already identified. You already have the heuristics, because you said as an example, right? I think Zomato is a great company. Why do you think Zomato is a great company? Because you use certain products and you feel that they're really hitting the nail in terms of pain points the customer is facing and building solutions around it. So the heuristics, therefore, if you have to abstract it, is find out all companies which when you use as products, and then see which amongst them really, really delight you like crazy. Like they are building very, very magical products. There are far and few. Like, for example, Airbnb is a great example. Uber is a great example. Zomato is a great example. Swiggy is a great example. So you can make that list because as a consumer and a PM, you can find that these are products that push the bar. The question then comes is, how do you apply to those companies? Now, one hack that I use to find out whether or not there is what I call as talent company fit is to get a sense of who has these companies been hiring historically in the past, what are the patterns, right? And then see in the walk of life that you had, what fits into that heuristics and not. For example, some companies tend to look at some prior companies as a proxy to say, okay, if people have worked in XYZ prior companies, I'm going to hire them. Some companies say, okay, prior college matters. Some companies say, prior product experience in certain kinds of products make a difference, right? So you have to go through a wide range of profiles in some of these companies that you aspire for and see how does your profile look vis-a-vis most of the candidates in that company. And it's a time-consuming exercise, but that's what gives you clarity to say that how far or close are you to that company in terms of hireability. If you notice a difference, then the question comes in, okay, I need to find a foot in the door. And usually the hack for this, again, is play to your strengths. Always enter into a company with what you are known for best in the market, and then switch internally. For example, if you are getting the best opportunities as a growth PM, become a growth PM inside Zomato, become a growth PM inside Airbnb, become a growth PM inside Google, and wait for the opportunity for a core PM role to open. Because by the time the company is already seeing you doing really, really well in that particular role, and they've built confidence and trust, and they're saying that, Vamsi understands this problem statements really well, and therefore this is a small adjacency problem. So you can move from growth to consumer experience rather easily. And that's how we've also done things in the past, because from hiring manager's perspective, the risk is always that I want to hit the ground running. I want to deliver impact yesterday. And therefore, I'm always going to be a little biased because of the pressures that are on me to hire people who have somewhere in the past delivered impact in a prior domain. And therefore, you don't have to spend months, years learning that domain expertise. Domain expertise could be either in the product domain itself or it could be industry in that itself, right? So it does matter that you play to your strengths, and this matters more as you go a little more senior into your career. So the best switching strategies are play to your strengths, enter into a role, become the best of the role inside the company, and then wait for the opportunities to open up. Any fast-growing company will almost often have new roles that are coming up, and it allows for you to easily switch from the role that you're in to the role that you want to go in. So that way, you're not fighting the battle head-on, but you're riding tailwinds, getting in and capitalizing on the fact that you've already built trust and evidence to your capabilities. So that's how I would choose to attack this problem statement if I were in your shoes. I hope that gives you some clarity on how to think about this problem statement.
Yes, Deepak. Yeah, I think this makes sense and give me a good direction to think about it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I think I'll take one last question. Saurabh, if you're there, I'll just quickly read your question as well. One moment, I'm just gonna. Okay, I'm having a bit of back and forth between my manager and developer timelines. He's of a view that PM is the one who should hold devs accountable, and it's on the PM when features are shipping late. My concern is we have a tech lead, and they should be the ones making sure devs aren't wasting time. From my end, I make it a point to understand why things are running late, but I feel helpless that and when we as PMs are accountable for delivering things on time. I'm stuck in this conundrum, not sure how to navigate. I think this is a classic conundrum faced by almost every product manager, because ultimately you are the single neck to choke on all things product, discovery, definition, and delivery, as much as you have also a tech and a design counterpart. The way you typically solve for this is, yes, your dev team is responsible. Like, you're not the one coding. There's someone else coding. There's a tech lead who's responsible for driving that team to execution. The way you manage for it is to understand and predict the odds of your tech teams likelihood to not deliver on time. And that's where you build a historical repository of why and when do tech teams not deliver on time. And you need to do what is called as a preemptive risk assessment to know that, hey, if my tech team says this will be done in 6 weeks, do we have a sense on actually whether it takes 6 weeks, or do you want to first say that, anything that we usually say 6 weeks is going to take 12 weeks. So you as a PM should also have a fairly good ability to estimate how long it will take. And sometimes you should be as good, if not better, than your tech counterpart. And that's a skill that you build over time. The way you build this skill over time is you build execution muscle with your tech team and keep understanding what are all the factors that prevent your tech team from delivering on time. It could be something as simple as hiring pipeline is broken. I'm not having enough engineers to come. It could be something as simple as your engineers are new to the team and they need time to ramp up to learn certain new code bases or certain new code tech, right? It could be something as simple as upstream dependencies or downstream dependencies with multiple engineering counterparts. Because very often than not, your product is not being built in isolation. It will require either another team's service or you will need some other dependency coming in. How do you understand and navigate through those complexities? You will also have situations where scope is actually the real reason why the problem is turning out to be going beyond its understanding. And lastly, you have unknown unknowns as well. If you're able to make a map of all of this, you should be able to reason, debate with your tech team to know when and how things are turning out into true unknown unknowns versus things which are actually things you could have predicted a little earlier in advance and come up with mitigation plans so that your prediction of timelines is more closer to accuracy. And therefore, you have also back work to figure out issues that can prevent your tech team from seeing success. For example, something as simple as production environment issues or development environment issues is also a reason for you as a PM to be concerned about, because if, let's say, 3 out of 10 times your product has not gone into production on time because of development environment issues, that's the first thing you would want to check in with your engineering team as well to say, hey, are we aware of any development environment issues that have been happening in recent times? Have we done some sanity checks for that to ensure that that is not the thing that springs upon a success? Because we know historically that's going to be a problem statement for us. Because our organization, for some reason, our environment is not being set up right for developers. You do that level of detailed discussion with tech team, and they also come up with a solid plan. And then there's obviously going to be situations where, despite your best planning, best risk mitigation, etc., you will have a situation where your engineering team, it's an unknown unknown. That's where proactive communication with your senior leadership or your counterparts matter, because you have already shown them a massive risk mitigation saying that, here are all the things that are known. And we have tried to go as granularly in detail into all of this to ensure that these things don't happen. But sometimes, despite our best efforts, there are going to be circumstances where an unknown will happen, which is we imagine a solution to work, but only after putting it into execution, we start realizing it has certain technical complexities because we've never solved this problem in the past. And that requires proactive communication with your counterparts to show that you've done everything possible. And then you have a plan B to say that if this feature is not shipping out on time, ultimately you have to understand that most business stakeholders care about the impact. So long as those BIPs move, that percentage points improve, they're not so hard pressed for solution A. If you have a solution B that you could also spin up and get to delivering impact, they'd be a little more comfortable knowing that things are being impacted the way they want. And yes, this is an unknown despite everyone's best effort, and you're putting all possible hands on deck to solve it and try to get it mitigated and resolved. So that effort and transparency and clarity to all stakeholders helps in mitigating these kind of conundrums. So, Saurav, I hope I've given you some clarity on how to think about this problem.
Yes, Deepak. I think this was amazingly put up. Thanks a lot. Super insight.
So yeah, you are not the executor, but you need to have absolute visibility or control. So the way we do it is we try to get into all the nitty-gritties of every single stage, like PRD alignment. Usually, how long does it take for PRD alignment to happen? Is that the first point where things break? After alignment, how often is it that the engineers have actually misunderstood the alignment? And therefore, it results in the feature not coming out the way it is. You go down and get to that level of detailing so that the number of unknown unknowns are drastically shrinking down. But like I said, despite every possible effort, you will hit an unknown unknown. The only thing that can solve for it is transparency and clarity and having a plan B in action. For every plan A, there is always a plan B, because never will plan A work out the way you want it. So you'll always have very safe bets also in the background to say that if it doesn't work out, I have a plan B that I can throw into production rather fast, and it's not going to take too much time because the unknown unknowns have been ironed out. This is the nth version of it we're doing. So doing it n+1 is really not that big of a deal breaker for me. I know it is going to happen, and I can predict it will happen at exactly this specific date. You need to have some of those tips and tricks in your up your sleeves, so that when circumstances like this happen, you can throw them and say, "Chalo, don't worry, your numbers will be hit." But it's not, I'm throwing this project down the drain. I am having some mitigation plan to get it done. Give me some time, and I'll make sure things do turn up on time. So this helps you to manage most circumstances really well. Cool. We probably have
Thank you.
time for maybe one last question. 3 minutes left. So happy to probably take the first question that comes up at this point of time. Awesome. Surbhi, what's your question?
Hi, Deepak. My question is, how should I think about product goals for an early stage startup?
It's a very broad question. Maybe if you can try to add a little more color to your question.
So I'm doing this for an exercise. I'm working for a product that recommends books to users. So it's an early stage startup. So how should I think about it?
Is the question on what is the right product thinking behind this problem statement, or how do I get inside this role? I'm still, again, not able to understand what you're seeking for as a question.
Sorry, I was speaking on mute.
No worries.
Discovery research, and I'm trying to define the product.
Got
And
it.
also, for that, I want to understand how should I think about a product goal, because it's an early stage startup. You get it?
Got it. When you say early stage, are you talking about a 0 to 1 product in the sense
Yes.
there's zero, and
Yes.
you're a product manager in a 0 to 1 team?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I will give you an answer and something you probably don't want to hear as well, but in the interest of transparency, I will. The first is, it's almost like doing the founder's work at this point. Your job should have been to have a very, very clear understanding of the consumer problem statement, which means you're immersing yourself in the problem space. You're trying to understand what are customers trying to do, why are they doing what they're doing. Your standard operating procedure of the key questions that you ask for any kind of problem discovery. Who's your customer? What is the behavior that they're currently doing at this point of time? Why are they doing this behavior? What are all the substitutes available? And why do you think your solution is better off than anything else? Like, this is standard opening discovery questions that you have, right? And you need to get to understanding this in such incredible detail to understand what you will build as a solution. If we don't answer these questions really well, you end up probably building something that nobody really wants. That said, I will have to say this, that my pet gripe is no PM should work in a 0 to 1 product if the founder has not found the answer to this question. You're actually doing your founder's work. If your founder does not know the answer for it, I wouldn't expect a PM to find the answer for this as well. So, not really sure that's what you want to hear. But sadly, this is what a founder should be doing at this point of time. If the founder does not know who the customer is, what is the problem statement, how does the customer go about solving this problem statement, what are all the possible solutions that exist, and why does your hypothesis have a better chance of winning against all of these other solutions? If you're an early stage PM and you're probably early in your PM career, it is really not the best use of your time because you're not learning anything effectively in your early stage of PM career. Have you worked as a PM in the past, or is this like?
Oh, no. Actually, I'm an aspiring product designer, and I'm doing this as an exercise to understand product, everything about product.
So in this case, what is your goal in this though? What do you
My
want?
goal, yeah. So my goal is to understand. Like I got this problem, and then my goal is to understand what are the goals of an early stage startup with a product, okay, and what should be my product goals so that I can design, a product around that.
You said you're an aspiring product designer, right? If I'm
Yes.
not wrong. See, at this point of time, if you're an aspiring product designer, if I were in your shoes, I would refrain from even jumping headlong into solving this problem. I would probably want to shadow someone who's doing this work to understand the thinking process and take small chunks of that problem statement to learn, as opposed to taking an incredibly large problem which is ambiguous, because then the unknowns are way too much. There's no clear direction which to take, right? Unless you've spent some time building products, trying to jump headlong into building a product is usually a risky problem. Now, some founders, as much as we like to hear stories of, Mark Zuckerberg one fine day got out of his dorm room and built a product, the unknown story behind it is Mark Zuckerberg has been building 10 products before he built Facebook. And he has seen success in all of those products. So there are many stories of people doing this casually without any pressure. And the problem is when you put pressure, real world business expectations, startups have that pressure. You lose the freedom to experiment and make mistakes and make big mistakes. And that makes a huge make or break in terms of learning coming across. Because the minute the pressure is put, you have to deliver a successful product. You've not gone through enough failure journeys to know what hypothesis works, why does your mental model fail, and what can you do to get better. So I would say that as an aspiring product designer, it will be probably, you shouldn't be even defining a role for yourself at this point of time. If someone is expecting you to do that, you're being set for failure at this point of time.
Okay.
You should rather have someone inside the organization saying, hey, Surabhi, here's a specific task, and I want you to join along me in this discovery journey so that we can do this together. And if it fails, it fails. It really doesn't matter. It's okay. Right? But if you don't have the freedom to fail, and if you're trying to define product goals and roles and all that so early on, you haven't even gone through the journey of understanding what it is to build a product, what does it encompass, what are the challenges, what does the journey look like, to be able to define what you should be doing right and wrong in this case. So someone is setting you up not for the right path at this point of time. I'm being very candid because you seem to be very passionate about what you want to do. But this is not definitely the most effective pathway for you to start if you're so passionate about this domain and role to begin with.
Cool. I'll think about it and I'll find ways to learn effectively.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, folks, thank you so much for your time. I hope I've been able to answer all the questions, and I'll definitely be doing more AMAs in the days to come. But I have to go for an appointment that I have at 12:45 to start rolling now. So thank you for your time. Thank you for taking your time out to invest in yourself and also helping me by building beautiful products, because that's going to benefit me at the end of the day. So thank you. Have a lovely Saturday and hope to see some of you soon again in the future as well. Have a fantastic Saturday. Take care.